I am Dr. Rod Hebden. Welcome to Sculpting Tomorrow, and our podcast where we really try and cut out the hype of the media around science, and whether it's scaring or whether it's overexcited about what's going on, and speak to the real people who are right at the cutting edge, helping shape tomorrow. And today we've got a bit of a different slant because we're looking at science and arts. And again, there's lots of really bad examples of science and arts and when they come together in kind of vague ways. But I wanted to introduce you to someone who I think is doing brilliant work and really exciting work coming up in the future that I want to find out about. So here we are with Adrienne Hart, who is CEO and Artistic Director of Neon Dance. Is that right?
Technically, yes.
Good,
but
good.
yeah.
So CEO of a huge organisation, obviously.
Of two.
Of two, yeah.
Plus
okay.
a brilliant board. Yeah.
It all counts. So very quickly, what is Neon Dance?
So Neon Dance is a dance company. It's a contemporary dance company. But in a nutshell, we create work. I create work with artists and interesting thinkers, scientists, anyone that I think could create an interesting experience with me. But that we create work collectively that we couldn't have created alone. So it's always dance plus another element.
Yeah, okay. And this is my first experience of this because
Yeah.
you guys are at the festival this year, and I'm not someone who watches a lot of contemporary dance, and I didn't know what to expect really, and it was quite mind blowing. It was quite an experience. But you've got some. I mean, we'll get to this, but the stuff you're planning now, you're doing something at Danger Park in Japan, and you're doing stuff with wearable costumes that I don't know, I didn't make a lot of it, just sounded crazy to be honest. But this is going to be something special commission that you're doing in Japan next year, so that sounds kind of amazing. So we're going to get to that I think at the end, but tell me, how did you get into this? I mean, firstly, the art side of it, dance, I mean that's your background, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. I started dancing when I was 3 years old, so it's really kind of integrated into my DNA, really. It's kind of part of who I am, and it's all that I've ever known from my kind of early memories. And so I grew up in Swindon, and there's a brilliant dance organisation here called Swindon Dance that enables young people to have sort of professional level training, really. And went off to London, did sort of conservatoire training at London Contemporary Dance School. And it was during my time there in London, obviously any kind of big mecca city, you get exposed to many different, it's just life, this kind of mesh of different cultures, ideas. And so I started to, felt like for the first time, look outside of the world of dance and be inspired by more than just what was happening in a dance studio. And whether that was going to a gallery or starting to understand sort of new technologies that were sort of emerging around that time, so motion capture and things like that, and seeing how that could then affect what the body is and what it could do. And that really kind of sat with me and was a kind of a starting point for wanting to set up a company that could challenge and experiment, and as well as make hopefully great work that resonated with others.
So you don't have any kind of science or engineering influence?
No, just an appetite for wanting to learn and to bring into my kind of orbit people that I find fascinating, that have that kind of expertise. And I know I could never, I'd need to go away and train for a very, very long time. My expertise are very much about the body and what the body's capable of, and how it can respond in different scenarios. But I've also developed a sense of how to collaborate with others and how to learn through. Sometimes you have to find very different languages, how they come together. Sometimes physically going to, as you mentioned, a new project going to Japan, sometimes there are actual language barriers, but even between, say, a roboticist and a choreographer, how do you find a common language to to communicate and create a cohesive thing at the end of a project.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I totally get the thing of a different language, really, because I mean, I think when you described what you did when we first spoke, it was, contemporary dance is a whole different, just a totally different world. It's okay. That sounds amazing, I think. Can't really visualise that, but okay.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a bit of a taking a leap of faith as people. It's, you kind of go, these people seem great. I've no idea what they do, but I kind of trust that it's going to be something cool. And I guess that's kind of what... So you worked with Bristol Robotics Lab as part of the festival this year. Was it? And you said that a lot of what you've done has been really inspired by your kind of intrigue with the body and how it works. So was it robotics that you first sort of worked with in science engineering, or what was your first project? And how did that come about?
I guess you could say the first project that took me on this path was a project called Empathy that we created in 2016. Actually started in 2015, and I happened to read Simon Baron Cohen's 0 Degrees of Empathy, and was very intrigued by the empathy spectrum, and it just kind of really sat with me, this idea that different people can be walking around with very different lived experience, depending on where you happen to sit on an empathy spectrum. You just see the world and engage with the world differently, and I guess his argument was to kind of do away with someone being good or evil, and who's really against the word evil, and saying it is actually just a brain and mind's mapped differently to someone else's. And it just kind of blew my mind.
Rather, because you think people with empathy good, people without empathy, sociopaths.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And the stigma behind saying you're a sociopath.
And so, I mean, this is, again, sort of way outside of my understanding. So it's entire ignorance for me. So that's what you was thinking about with autism. So people with autism tend to be low empathy levels. Is that? And what you said he's Cambridge. What does he do? He's, I mean, I don't know if this isn't his claim to fame, isn't he? But cousin of Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yes.
But he is an amazing person in his own right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what does he do? Who is he?
So Simon Baron Cohen is, and I just realised he's recently become Sir Simon Baron Cohen, which is amazing.
Okay. Sir Simon.
Yes. So he's at Cambridge University, clinical psychologist. He's written several books, and he's in charge of an autistic centre based at Cambridge University, and they do some really great groundbreaking work in terms of understanding the autistic mind, and to support and help. They do some great work with children, for example. And I was just very inspired, and I think it's a big, like you were saying at the beginning of this podcast, to be able to overcome a quite gritty, difficult, complex subject, and to break it down and to explain it in simple terms. That's always the aim, whether it's contemporary dance or science or whatever it is. So he does that really well. Okay. And he was really approachable, actually, and I kind of I approached him after a talk event he was doing, and convinced him to have a coffee with me and to talk around about empathy as an idea. And like you said, someone that has no understanding in a way or background in dance, we kind of sat there at polar ends of the spectrum and found a middle way to talk about empathy and how I might take those concepts and ideas and create a stage work with 5 dancers that would make sense.
What was his first reaction then? Was he just was he humouring you and going, that sounds interesting?
Yeah, there was definitely the first conversation. I think we'd scheduled it at a train station in London at King's Cross St Pancras.
So you could get away and
I think there was an element of that, and actually it was lovely because the meeting was meant to be like half an hour or something, and then it was a much longer chat that we had, and it became part of a series of conversations. So yeah, I think hopefully I persuaded him. I wasn't a crazy lady. That I actually, there was some interesting. It's about connecting with different audiences, and we found that people that came to see Empathy, they were from many different backgrounds. They came to it for many different reasons, and that's always an aim for me. With if I just wanted to make work for contemporary dance lovers, it's a very small percentage of the population. So yeah, that's definitely not an aim of mine.
Okay, so by this way you got to get contemporary dance to people who are interested in empathy and neurodiversity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and conversations around more broadly around the society that we live in, and how to get on with others that might think and act very, very differently to yourself.
Okay. And so what was it? What did you produce in the end? What was the final piece?
Yeah, so the final piece was a stage work, an hour-long stage work for 5 dancers, and we created a laser light design.
Okay.
We had Newman for Use, who are they're based in Germany, a sort of European design collective. They do big operas and other amazing projects, but I persuaded them to work with me to create this laser light design, and so it was kind of light architecture on stage, and I liked that, and this is where kind of technology is always kind of embedded somewhere in my work, but I thought of the laser light as an additional performer on the stage, because it created boundaries and it had its own personality in a way. It would create and need its own space, and there would be points where it would create walls, because we'd have when the laser hits smoke, for example, it creates what looks like a physical wall or barrier. So there was this element involved in the production. A beautiful score by 4 composers, and I purposely put 4 composers, so 4 different egos in the room, and they had to create one cohesive score. Right. So kind of empathy threaded through the kind of the work, and then we worked with this amazing artist that I've worked with for years now, Anna Rajkovic, who she came up with different ways to again have this sense of other being embedded into the performers and how they encountered one another. So we had extended arms, where one performer couldn't hug or connect or touch others in the same way that the others could. There would be a physical barrier. There was a mirror piece, where a kind of sphere mirror piece that went over one of the performers' faces. So playing with the idea of mirror neurons and how we, I look at you and I'm gathering information all the time. But with the taking that away, then the other performers would look and actually see their own reflection rather than the other performer because of that.
You've got images of a couple of these.
I have, absolutely.
So tell me what we're looking at. So for people watching on YouTube, hopefully you'll see an image of this now. So describe what we're seeing.
Yeah, so the first image is the dancer Anna Paula Lizo. She's inside what it looks. I mean, it looks like she's being beamed up. I think you'd say.
I mean, essentially, it's basically all dark apart from what looks like a green kind of tube, really. So she's standing in a kind of green, smoky tube, looking down and looking a little bit. I don't know what she's looking. I mean, that's my lack of empathy. Thoughtful, sad. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's quite weird and ethereal and otherworldly. But also it's like she's standing in a kind of glow stick, essentially.
Absolutely.
Like she's standing in a giant glow stick. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so this is an example of how the laser light creates this kind of world, this architecture around the performers. And I guess I was thinking at the time this idea of cruel architecture. Have you come across that kind of?
Explain that.
So you could say, so some people, the brilliant Leopold Lambert would describe it as if an architect drawing a line on a piece of paper, it's inherently cruel because it suggests bodies like a wall or a body, and somewhere is inside and outside of that,
so a division.
That line, a division. Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely. So with cool architecture, we played with this idea of barriers and the inside and outside space within that kind of world, and also making, in terms of the movement vocabulary, making it purposely quite alien-like and other-like, for people to. One of my aims was to make people empathise more with the laser light if I embedded a sort of personality into that technology, at times more than the dancers that they would see on stage. So that was
okay. So the laser light became a person that you empathised with.
Yeah. I know, it's strange.
It does sound strange.
Yeah.
Can I watch this still online?
Yeah, you probably can.
Okay.
But it's one of those things. The beauty of live performance is actually, you don't get the same. Some of the images that the audience talked about, could you achieve it by watching it online?
You need to be there live. Yeah. Like a live musical performance or anything.
Absolutely.
It's very different being in the room, isn't it?
Yeah.
This does look fascinating. What's the other one? I think you've mentioned this.
Yeah, so the other one was this mirror piece that I was describing. At one point, again, this is Anna Paula, star of the show, she is amazing, places this mirror headpiece over the top of her face so that she can't see anything. So she's reliant on sensing the others in the space as well, which she's having to do away with her vision and just rely on hearing and sense of touch.
So for those listening to the audio version, essentially what we're looking at is a dancer in essentially a kind of skin tight sort of white costume. So it's very sort of blank, isn't it? So entirely neutral. And the only other thing, it looks like, to me, it reminds me of a fencer. So the kind of the fencer's mask.
Absolutely.
So that kind of essentially an oval that just covers the whole face and nothing else. Just kind of, it looks like it's just strapped behind the head. But instead of being kind of perforated, I think it's just black. That looks just black to me. But you say it's mirrored.
Yeah,
so it's not just blanking her expressions. You see your own expression in it.
Yes, exactly.
It feels like a different thing from just lacking empathy. When you talk to someone, part of empathy is reflecting, isn't it? Someone smiles, you smile back.
Yeah.
You just mirror, don't you? And I guess, weirdly, she will be mirroring what she would be seeing.
Yeah, that's true. And there was a point in the piece near the end where she walks through the laser that's sort of scanning back and forth, and the laser sort of bounces off the piece in a very dramatic way.
Okay, but I hadn't realised as well, she's essentially blinded by this mask.
Yeah.
So she has no visual cues in terms of her empathy. Yeah. Whereas the first person looking at her just sees themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is an interesting experience.
Yeah, and there's a sort of very intimate moment near the end where she's, right there, she's crouched on the floor because she can't see. When we tried a series of improvisations, but she would then initially go down to the floor in order to sort of find her way around the space, navigate the space, and two other dancers would guide her. It became this very, very intimate moment of sort of listening because of that sight being taken away. Okay.
So what did you learn from doing this, or did it feed back into Sir Simon's work, or?
That's a good question. I'll have to ask him.
Apart from you got sort of new audiences seeing stuff and going, what on earth have I just seen? A lot of them, but taking different things from it depending on what they brought to, I guess. But what did you feel like you learned, or he learned, or what comes out of it?
I think in a way it's you put something out there, and it's only once you've got people in the room. They bring, as you say, they bring their own experiences to what they witness. And then what I loved was the conversations that I had. We had a series of post-show talks after this particular production, and some of the imagery and the conversations that kind of sparked from empathy and from seeing the work, it was just really inspiring. And I'd have to ask Simon Baron Cohen if it's fed at all into his practice. Maybe not, but I think he was very happy. I know from the email conversations we had afterwards that his work was being taken into a very different context. And
yeah, it would be fascinating to follow up with him. I mean, you might find that he's
Yeah.
kind of had a whole new strand of work
Oh,
based
that's
on his
true.
experience.
That's true.
If
Yeah.
so, we're going to have him back.
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
a follow-up podcast.
Absolutely.
but
No, I'd love to have a conversation with him. Yeah.
That'd be good. So that was your first kind of foray into arts with science.
Yeah, I'd say so.
But a very particular kind of, I mean, in terms of psychology and So where did you go from there?
Well, after that piece, I ended up making a piece inspired by two Japanese artists called Arakawa and Madeline Gins, and they were definitely bending the rules of reality, because their whole philosophy was they had a few different sort of taglines and but they had reversible destiny was their big kind of reversible destiny, yeah. And they decided not to die.
Right.
So
This all sounds very Marvel supervillain.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So they were around making work in the from the 60s through to the early noughties, and they're both not alive anymore. So it's really interesting. I got to meet Reversible Destiny Foundation is kind of their legacy, and I got to meet some of the people that used to know them really, really well shortly after they died, and they were in a very kind of odd place, because these artists were determined not to die, and then they did.
Yeah.
And their kind of, but their legacy, it does actually tap into and sit quite well with some elements of reality, and just this idea of sort of challenging the brain. If you presume you're going to die, it's definitely going to happen. But if you reverse that, I mean, it was a fascinating project to look at 40 years worth of work that they'd created. And this is, I should say, so there were canvases, there was painting, artwork. Madeline Gins was a poet, so initially her output was poetry, and then eventually later in life they created architecture together. And this is where the danger part comes in. The Euro Park in Japan was one of the final things they created together. This vast park that was really designed to challenge the body to go on living.
Yes. Okay. And that's the bit you will be coming to at the end,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
But
there's. I mean, so I initially made a work that was inspired by them. I created I went to stay in their Reversible Destiny loft, which anyone can stay in on Airbnb. And,
oh, really?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
It's a series of, they say apartments, but almost like pod-like apartments in Mitaka in Japan, on the outskirts of Tokyo. And the floor's bumpy. This wardrobe is on the ceiling.
Okay.
The plugs.
I mean, this just sounds like a health and safety nightmare.
Yeah.
Like the place you're most likely to slip and die.
Well, you'd say that, but actually they've got some beautiful stories of an older lady that walks with a cane normally that said she didn't need the cane in that space because she could grip onto the floor.
Okay.
And a boy, when talking about autism, there was another story of a boy who was on the autistic spectrum, was getting very, very excited in the space, and then he went into their sphere room, which is like this beautiful yellow sphere room, and he sat in it, calmed right down and started to sing beautifully. So it's kind of demonstrating how architecture can influence positively and negatively the body.
Yeah. So what was your old piece that you did?
So we created an inflatable set in which our audiences entered, and at one point it collapsed into this bumpy floor to echo the kind of lofts that we encountered. And there was no kind of technology really in that sense. I mean, that we had a surround sound score. But yeah, it was very much taking their legacy and trying to make sense of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of so it's more the experience and the okay.
Yeah, but it was my experience of going to Japan that we premiered the work in a really rural part of Japan. It's called Echigo Samari, and I was encountering kind of really remote communities, but actually how they were working together and working with the festival, I found really inspiring. And it was that combination of going into Tokyo and seeing, encountering people that were making great work in the world of robotics, and then going out to this rural community and seeing people that in theory should be really lonely because they're really isolated, but they're not. It was people in the city that were lonely. That was the kind of my starting point for then going into robotics and thinking about loneliness as a starting point for developing a work with robotics. It's like a strange unfolding.
I mean, I think a lot of these things rely on having a strange brain that does weird connections and tangents, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Otherwise, you'd never get what you produce, I guess.
No, it's true.
So you went from there to, is that where you started your relationship with the Bristol Robotics Lab?
Yeah, I know, it's a strange one. How do you get from Japan to Bristol? But it turned...
By plane.
Yes, yeah. So Takashi Ekigami, an amazing individual who specialises in AI in Tokyo, he invited me to a party, and Hema Phillimore, who was at the time working in Japan, was there, and she's a roboticist and a lecturer, and she just accepted a post at Bristol Robotics Lab, part of Bristol University. So obviously I'm based in Swindon, and so it was great to hear someone, oh, you're just 40 minutes away rather than many hours away.
Much handier.
Yeah.
Although the trips must have been good.
Yeah.
So then you basically linked up with Hema and then, I mean, she got it straight away, or how did that relationship develop and create your first project? She's
amazing. She's just, she got it straight away. And I think I'd already, because I was back and forth from Japan for a few different projects, and I'd already had this idea of something around creating a project around loneliness and companionship and belonging, but working with robotics in some way. There was kind of that rough idea. And I'd met up with a few different roboticists, and I felt like they just didn't get it, and they were really happy to offer something that was off the shelf technology. Right. Some great stuff, like really great stuff, but it just didn't interest me to something that was off the shelf and then respond to it. If you're starting and driven by a concept, it just doesn't marry. It would feel really superficial, I think. Yeah.
Which I think a lot of science art can be quite superficial. Yeah. You know, if you're kind of not careful, because it's, here's a thing we've done, do something artistic inspired by that, and it can be a little bit, it can be superficial. So how did you break that?
Well, I think is thanks to finding the right collaborator. So Hema, just has that mind that she got really excited about the idea, she just started in this as a lecturer at Bristol Robotics Lab, but had some thoughts around how we could create these roaming robots that could function in a live performance context. And I then brought in Anna Rajkovic again, because I thought that if we had someone who could create a bespoke design, then people looking at these robots wouldn't straight away think, I've seen something like that on television and it's going to take over the world and destroy it. Okay. There's all these kind of negative connotations attached to robots that...
They do a lot of... we had someone in from Bristol Robotics Lab for the first episode of this, working on the relationship between people and swarms. And basically, and it's amazing in Bristol. You expect the Robotics Lab to be full of engineers and that kind of class of nerd. Yeah. But actually they have sociologists, they have psychologists. It's a lot about how we accept or don't accept robots, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and that's, Hema and I, when we first started working together, we decided we didn't want to create something purely in a lab, that then we go, here's this new shiny thing, and expect people to engage with it. We wanted to unpack what a robot is and what it can do, and how people engage with robots, whether what's all of the baggage that comes with. It's a bit like deciding to work with a famous piece of music. You know, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that you need to acknowledge. So yeah, we kind of went on this whole journey together of doing these co-creation workshops where we worked with many different people, as diverse a range of people as we could possibly encourage to come and join us. And we started off with a very simple little robot, like on a big thick base, and I loved that how people would project all sorts of incredible things and intelligence that just wasn't there onto this little robot, and that was really eye-opening in terms of what we could do, and it also opened, you know, how clever did we need to be if it's in a theatre context. You could do something quite simple in order to get the same effect as something that's very autonomous, let's say, or you know, there were a lot of debates and conversations that we had.
So it's kind of about understanding people's natural response to the robot, or the kind of basic thing, and then what you just built on it, or did the robots change? You did the different sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. So there were many iterations along the way, and we, after a while, we ended up, Anna going away and creating these sketches and drawings, and we ended up with these kind of, I mean, you saw them from Festival Tomorrow, our lab that we had, these kind of...
This is your mechanical bloom project.
Yeah, so these kind of prehistoric creatures, I love the idea that they could have evolved, you know, rather than been made in a lab. So we ended up, with, and it was through some of the sketches and drawings that a lot of children actually came up with. And I think it was slightly influenced because I brought in a fossil as well, and they were looking at that, and that was a kind of one
of the inspirations.
Yeah.
Because when I saw them, they didn't look like robots. I was expecting robots, and I didn't see what in my head was robots. They're kind of almost skeletons. They were kind of they felt like it could have been part of a fossil. But it was articulated and it responded. So what happened with that project? What did you learn, or what were the aims of it?
Well, it kind of splintered and branched out into like 3 different projects really. So we had back in tail end of 2022, we premiered a live music. It wasn't live music, it was live dance and robotics project that had these 2 robots that where their home was a kind of this sandy landscape, and they were roaming in the sand, and 2 dance artists that were in this kind of inhabited in this world, and there were moments where one was lifted and put onto the dancer. And they had a kind of duet, let's say, together, and you know that was its own thing. I think what I wanted to achieve with that work wasn't quite achieved, if I'm honest.
Okay.
We wanted to have it so that they could be teleoperated by people at home, so that anyone at home could, if they couldn't attend the performance in person, they could enter the body of the robot, and technically it was all there. But we just didn't have, I feel like we needed another 10 years, you know, in terms of like getting there. But so they were teleoperated, but by the end we just had them teleoperated by the dancers, because there were so many hurdles to get over in terms of, again, language barriers, and how do you make things as simple as possible so you don't have to deliver an essay to an audience member in order to operate a robot. Yeah. But so there was that as a first step. Yeah. Okay.
The best projects are massively overambitious.
I know. Yeah, and Hemmer and I are still working together, so you know, watch this space. But we then we were invited back out to Japan. Reoccurring theme here. And we took over a sake, a disused sake factory, flooded it with sand, and then we had these kind of turtle-style robots roaming around. And then our dancer, she was touring in Hong Kong at the time. Mm-hmm. She was being streamed live and projected onto one of the walls, and she was her movement was being she was teleoperating one of the robots. And
was she actively teleoperating? Was she trying to control them, or was she dancing in a way that the algorithm then translated?
Yeah, so she was able to see, there was a video feed coming back to her, so she was able to see. And what was lovely in that situation is the audience were roaming, and they were able to, there was another teleoperated robot that they were in charge of. So there's a beautiful moment where our dancer Fakiko and then an audience member in Japan were trying to get their two robots to meet and encounter one another.
And when you're saying, just to be clear really, so when you're saying teleoperating, I mean, kind of the first picture in my head is someone with, kind of like a PlayStation style controller.
Right.
The joystick, and they're kind of doing this. They're not controlling them like that, are they?
No, it's actually via a Zoom call. So it's it's a very simple bit of kit that enables the robot to take a sort of skeleton of I mean, it's a little bit of AI, I guess, like seeing where the dancer is on the screen, and then mapping kind of nodes of their kind of joints.
Okay.
And then you could do it with a hand as well, but this was done with the whole body. And so as the dancer moved, then and I should say the dancer's body, very, very different to the robot's body in this instance. So it wasn't exactly being translated, but there was a system in place so that it would then go, okay, her left arm is moving, therefore the robot's left tentacle, you could call it, shifted in the space as well.
So it's a kind of gesture control, but it's essentially, sort of motion capture thing.
In some respects, without the suit. Yeah.
Without the suit and the little ping pong balls.
Yeah, exactly.
But the camera is essentially seeing the dancer, and it's going, okay, based on your movements, and there's an interpretation, and that controls the robot.
Yeah.
And I think we saw a bit of that in the festival in the Mechanical Bloom you brought, because you had a couple of pieces which they were sat there on the sand, and essentially we just had kids and adults just going and kind of moving their arms about and seeing how this robot would kind of behave.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bigger performance of that.
Absolutely, exactly. And what I loved about in the lab scenario is that we had it set up so that people could see their kind of what the robot sees projected. So this kind of skeleton, and the kids were more engaged with the projection of themselves than seeing the outcome, which was the robot. I was like, have you noticed that it's responding to you? Right. Oh yeah.
I'm just looking at myself on the camera, really.
Yeah.
There's nothing people are more interested in themselves.
Yeah.
Turns out. But it is. And so where are you taking that project next? Well,
in a way, the project's come to an end in a sense that it's going to evolve, but I think a different iteration is going to come out of that process. But one of the things, if we had a 10-year plan, right, we would.
I mean, we all have a 10-year plan.
For our robots.
Absolute fiction, but
then we wanted to take the turtle-style robots that had this great system, turtle-inspired system for moving across the sand, and then these kind of prehistoric arms, and put the two together. But ultimately, Hem and I have had conversations around this. Ultimately, I run a dance company, so I can't go too far down this route and
you
not
sometimes
produce
forget
any.
that and think you make robots.
Yeah, well, we could. I could move on, but everything I do it's technology and design, but always as the body is the central tenant. Okay. And in that instance, it was the robot body, which is very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. But it was also ultimately how people and their bodies communicated with these robots and use them as vehicles to communicate with others.
Yeah.
So if it goes too far away from that, it feels out of my.
Yeah. And in some ways, it's quite interesting that the kids who are controlling these robots by moving their bodies were interested in it actually drew their attention to their own bodies and how they move.
Absolutely.
Whereas you just tend to move your body without thinking about it. They suddenly become hyper aware of their joints and what they can do.
Absolutely. And there was a beautiful conversation I had with a lady who was in a wheelchair, and she said that it enabled her a certain freedom, and that she used to love to dance, and she felt like she couldn't do that anymore. And I took her email address and I said, I'd love to continue working with you actually, because that feels like a win to me. If there's something that we can do that enables someone to find a way to move, an extension of their own bodies in a different form, that's super exciting.
Yeah. And I guess that maps to your way you start with robots and loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well. Yeah. So it's a kind of it feels like a weird intersection.
Yeah.
So it was really good to have Mechanical Bloom at the festival. It was really, really interesting. We had a lot of people come through and enjoy it.
Loads, yeah.
And that contrasted with what you'd see as kind of more, end product robotics, which they also got to play with and things.
Yeah.
So what are the two big projects you're working on now for sort of next year? So what's the one you're doing with Air Giants? So Air Giants were at the festival too so they do soft robotics essentially.
Yeah.
Can you explain what soft robotics is, or at least their version of?
Well, I tell you what, I'm sure there's someone in the world of soft robotics.
Appreciating you're not a roboticist.
Yeah. But one of the things, so with Air Giants, they create inflatable robots essentially, and they're of scale. So usually they're like these huge, at least I think 2 meters is maybe the smallest robot that they do. And I guess how the company director, Richard, got in touch with Hema and I after we did a talk a bit like this actually. We had a conversation together, and I realised, they do inflatable robots, and I'd just done a piece with inflatables of the previous work and a piece with robots, so it made sense to then combine the two and collaborate with
They brought this 9-meter soft robotic inflatable snail to the festival, which is probably their biggest piece, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing.
And it is kind of incredible. It was weird how people interacted with it. People, like you said, people immediately, it really didn't take much for people to sort of anthropomorphise it, and they just started engaging it like it was a living creature, despite the fact that it was so bizarre looking, really.
Absolutely.
And clearly artificial.
Yes. And I guess that's, going back to what soft robotics is, and it is about using materials that traditionally, if you think of a robot, and that's what we found when we asked people to draw, think of a robot and draw it, the tin can idea came to mind. And with soft robotics, it's a really exciting field because it enables all sorts, 3D printing, all sorts of different materials to be used, and for different outputs in many different situations. Obviously, in the arts, there's a lot of fun, interactive stuff that you can do that just wouldn't be safe if it wasn't soft robotics, right? You can with Air Giants, they do a brilliant work where you can hug there or be hugged.
You hug it and it hugs you back, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And
this is all, like you said, there's no metal in it. There's not even like a skeleton in the big snail. It was just pockets of air that open and close. So it's kind of just pneumatic. So it's an incredible thing. Yeah. So what's the project you're doing with them?
The project is a very, very early, it's just pure research at the minute, which I love, because up until now, a lot of the time I come up with an idea and then it's all about how do we turn it into a production that we tour and stuff. And so this idea, it's bringing together Neon Dance, Air Giants, Bristol Robotics Lab, and then a really interesting group of speech and language therapists, and to have a conversation around enhancing communication for those, for anyone, but specifically looking at those that struggle with communication for one reason or another. So kind of looking at some of the clients that speech and language therapists work with, some of the learning that and processes that they use, and then making something that's wearable, so you could put onto the body and it would enhance your communication in some way or another.
Okay, I can't picture that at all. The closest I can come, sci-fi reference coming in, is essentially Ripley in Aliens to wearing a giant sort of, what do they call the mecha suit? I mean, she's kind of so she's this thing, and it's a kind of wearable forklift, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you start to see that. I mean, then people are making these, aren't these kind of wearable things which make you stronger or faster or kind of give you these enhanced physical capabilities. Yeah. So I can kind of get that concept. I can't quite get the concept of how it helps you with speech and language impairments.
I guess it comes back to, we were talking about mirror neurons and how much information we gather from say the face, for example. And if some conditions mean that you don't have control of your face, for example, so that what you want to convey isn't so easily conveyed through all of the kind of non-verbal stuff. So it's kind of looking at that. I mean, people say about percentages of how much you understand through hearing, and then the rest is all non-verbal, body language, etc. Right. And which obviously for me is fascinating. But yeah, so it's kind of looking at that side of things, the non-verbal side, and how we might be able to use a wearable robotic to give people the control to offer, communicate, convey how they're feeling inside.
Okay. I mean okay, I want to watch this one because this sounds interesting. So essentially it's a way of giving non-verbal communication if you are unable to do that for various reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, going beyond if I've had Botox and I can no longer raise my eyebrows.
Yes.
But essentially it's kind of overcoming whatever, impairment that means you can't convey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And does it do the other way in terms of helping you interpret it? Or is it's more about the communication?
No, that's a really interesting question, and it's something, because it's really early research, we're just, so Air Giants have kind of gone away. We've had a series of workshops. They're going away to create a prototype. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to hint at something that we could do that would be way more nuanced. And but yeah, the idea is that we have something enough to have something of interest that we can gather some more funding and then go away and do a much larger project that could hopefully help and support a range of people. And one of the things that's really important to me is that we don't just sit in a kind of little little tiny group and go, oh yeah, I think these people want this. It's really important to me that, a bit like with the other robotics project, that right from the beginning we go and find test audiences and we bring a very crude prototype and say, what do you think? Tell us what you'd like from this, what's missing, and that we build something together. So it's kind of, it's that collaborative desire again coming up.
Yeah, okay. So hopefully using a few groups in Swindon and maybe bringing it back to the festival next year and testing on lots of people. Yeah. Create another kind of lab for the week.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, no, we got so much from that. It was it really felt like genuinely a two-way exchange. It wasn't just about us showing some interesting stuff. We got so much back.
Rather than going, look at the clever thing we've done.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, I've got hundreds of drawings at home from that week.
Now you've got to just go through and process them all.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about Danger Park.
I should say it's not officially called Danger Park. It just it got coined Danger Park.
Much like the Magic Roundabout in Swindon, it wasn't its official name to start with.
Oh right, and then they decided to.
Well, that's what everyone called it. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, it had a very very dull, interchangey type name. The such and such junction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now Swindon's famous for it.
Quite.
So going back to Arakar and Madeline Gins, these two amazing artists, I encourage people to look them up. They created this vast park called Europark in Japan. And
is there a reason why it's Europark in Japan?
I think it's because it's part of the prefecture, the kind of area. It's it's
no European connection.
No, and not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But I'll check that actually. I should check.
Yeah.
But it's spelt with a Y, not
Okay.
But the park is essentially they've how I described at the beginning when I said about their lofts, their kind of apartments that were purposely meant to scramble how body perception. This is on the kind of macro scale, right? It's huge park. And one of the first things that you'll encounter, you'll go into a building and the floor is exactly the same as the ceiling. Then you go through into the park, and everything's off balance. So it's purposely kind of taking you off balance and
just disorienting.
Yeah, disorientating for sure. And it's they would argue it's kind of igniting the body. So they would argue. So these chairs, these nice comfy sofas that we're sat on, they would argue these are architecture towards death.
Okay.
Because
it's good to know.
They're too comfy, not challenging the body.
I mean, I quite like comfy, unchallenging sofas.
I know. But yeah, so that's But anyway, that was part of them.
I mean, there's a museum. I think is it Walthamstow? Is an old fireworks factory, which. Sorry, this is a tangent. But it's linked, it's related. And so they were so worried about workers who are they're making fireworks. So, fairly, and they wanted to make sure that people stayed alert and attentive, didn't nod off while they were doing this important work. They sat on stools which were hinged. So you could kind of sit in the stool, but if you relaxed at all, you'd fall. So you kind of sat and perched on it. And actually, as the stool tilted, because you were going beyond a certain angle, a bell would go off.
That's amazing.
So it's deliberately slightly uncomfortable,
yeah,
and designed to keep you alive.
Yes.
So that was an architecture towards death. So there you go. That was totally related.
No, it isn't. I have heard of that. Actually.
Okay, so rather than standing desk, we should have tilting bell controlled.
Yeah, but it's. I will say, having having gone to the park and stayed in the lofts, it's impossible to feel anything but joy being in both of those spaces.
You weren't just permanently uncomfortable?
No, not at all. Not at all. The complete opposite. And for example, going back to the lofts with the bumpy floor, I felt like it was kind of massaging my feet. So if you think about it, like how our feet have evolved, we haven't evolved. We haven't been born with wearing shoes. So it makes sense. And there's in the park. You do feel energized by the space. Why it got coined Danger Park was because people would fall and trip. There are hundreds of pathways, and not all of them physically exist. So there's a map, and so this is where they're both artists, right?
Right.
So people, I guess some people tried to do all the paths and ended up. Yeah, some of them aren't physically possible to climb up or
okay.
And so now you can hire a helmet to go around the park if you
in case you're going to bump into stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lost child alert would be so tricky. I mean, the paths that don't exist as well.
Yes. No, it's quite open as well. But children, I mean, that's the thing. The director Momoyo Homo of Reversible Destiny says, just be led by a child around the park, see how they navigate it. And children are just, naturals. And it's kind of, we need to kind of go back, reverse our destinies.
Okay,
and
so it's unprogramming of brain in terms of what you're expecting. And that kind of, it sounds a little bit hippie, but that kind of, like you said, with your feet, sort of reconnecting a bit with the ground, rather than having a permanently cushioned flat surface which you take around with you in your shoes.
Yeah, exactly. So we've been commissioned because they're celebrating 30 years of the park next year.
Okay.
And we've been commissioned to make a site-specific piece at the park. And so we're...
and this will be a permanent installation, or is this a performance?
No, it'll be a performance, yeah. Okay. But what we want to do there, some of the work will be coming back to the UK, and we'll make something out of it for UK audiences as well. But we want to make wearable and playable sculptures
Wearable, playable sculptures.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, working with Anna Reykjavik, we're at this precise moment trying to figure out, and Hemma's been helping me out as well actually, how you might take a piece that connects one body to another with lots and lots of strings.
Okay.
And all those strings could be playable, that you could upload a sound to them and
Musically playable.
musically playable, yeah.
So you kind of the vibrations and the string, what?
And it is possible because Hemma's given me a few suggestions actually,
Okay.
but so it wouldn't be it wouldn't be actual string or thread. It would need to be some kind of other chord. So Hemma was giving me the example of a kind of playable fabric that she did a project where you stroke the fabric and it plays music, which is fun.
Yeah, that does sound fun.
Yeah, so and this is, I can barely talk about it because I'm still trying to understand how on earth we do it. I don't know yet.
Yeah, okay.
But this is how early on it is.
Yeah, so conceptually it's pretty ambitious and vague because you've got no idea you're going to pull this off really from the sound of it.
But I guess intuitively I know it's possible because I've not seen anything like this.
No.
If anyone listening to this thinks they have, then I'd like to please get in touch. But there are other playable ideas, artworks that have existed. So it's kind of taking all that learning and doing some really good thorough research and finding the right collaborative team to pull it off as well.
Yeah. Okay. So having covered empathy and neurodiversity, sort of loneliness. It's essentially extending capabilities of the body and communication and this kind of playable kind of stuff. What is the thing you haven't tackled that you'd like to tackle?
Gosh, well, in a way, it's a lifelong pursuit, kind of challenging what a body is and what it can do. So, there might be new technologies that I haven't encountered yet that change how I think of the body, my body, other bodies. But it feels like there's so much. I've just kind of scratched the surface. There's not necessarily wanting to do one big bold thing. It's just kind of chiseling away at this idea, and that on that journey I'll encounter fantastic, interesting thinkers, makers, and to just challenge how I perceive myself and others, and for audiences to kind of come on board and be part of that journey as well.
Yeah, I mean, you don't feel like you're any more a contemporary dance practitioner. I feel like you've created something else in terms of what you are or do, or how do you see yourself?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know, and it's like my language is my medium is a moving body, right?
Yeah.
So trying to articulate in words what I do, I struggle in general. So if anyone has any suggestions for what I do, I'd love to hear. It's a challenge. It's something that I've got a brilliant board that I work with, and when we set up, we turned Neon into a charity quite recently, and there was a lot of conversations around making sure that we don't say too much that it's just contemporary dance, that we give a little bit more.
Because you have to define your charitable objectives in that,
exactly,
which must have been quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So what are you trying to do?
Well, it is performing arts, and ensuring that we're giving that out to as many people as possible, giving opportunities for anyone to be creative and to experience culture and the arts. So that more broadly is what we do. But yeah, it's kind of, I think I've said earlier on, it's that idea of taking technology and design and then making sure the body is a central tenet by not putting contemporary dance in there too much. Like if you talk about the moving body, it actually gives scope to do so much, because everyone has a body.
Yeah. And that's kind of where it comes back, isn't it? So essentially, when you started with, you're a contemporary dancer who enjoyed dance and then became fascinated by the body. I've done this weird kind of route through neurodiversity and all these kind of things and robotics. But it kind of comes back to actually this is about exploring the limits of and the extensions of the body and kind of opening that up to the world and yourself in the process.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It sounds amazing. So we're really looking forward to seeing where these projects go. Definitely having you back at the festival and having people try this stuff out.
Oh, I'd love that.
So thank you very much for coming in. Thank you. This has been an incredible talk. I mean, I kind of had an idea what you do, but I feel like I know and also don't know a lot more about what you do.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, I'll keep inviting you to stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.